And we'll introduce myself. I'm Vita Konitz, Chair Emeritus of the Environmental Caucus, and helping Greg out, who is our Legislative Director.
Thanks. And I'm Greg Layton. Yeah, I'm a head of the Legislative Committee, but really Vita and I are co-chairs of it. We've been sharing the work equally, pretty much. And you probably know about the Environmental Caucus, but in case you don't, the DFL has a number of community caucuses, and we're one of them, where we advocate for environmental issues within the party and outside the party and with the legislature. And anyone can join. And I put a link in the chat. I'll put a link in the chat again a bit later. But it's just, it's easy to find our site. We're dflenvironment.org, all one word. And if people are welcome to join us, and it's free. You basically get on our mailing list. You get invited to events like this. You can join leadership. We have openings in our leadership board usually at any given time. You join committees and work towards goals that we have with us. And one of the big things we do at another time of the year is we work on resolutions. If you look at the DFL party platform and action agenda, there's a lot of environmental things on there. You're welcome. That's mostly us. We're organizing and getting those things done. And we work on endorsing people for election, which is a lot of work. And we really like volunteers to come in and sit with the candidates who are running for election. It's a great way to get to know the person who will be your legislator next round, possibly. And we have outreach events. We appear at various events, and we'd like people to show up there and tell people about us and so on. And you can also donate. There's a donate button you can press. We don't ask for donations when you join. In fact, we're kind of a low budget operation. We don't have a big budget. We don't spend much money or use much money, but it doesn't mean you can't give us some if you don't want to. And as we go into this event, you've already done this, but we're asking people to put your climate story in the chat. And we're going to come back to that theme a few times. In a minute, Vita will introduce our main guests, but I wanted to say a word about that. You know, as the legislative session approaches and begins, we tend to look at the process as one of creating bills, arguing about bills, passing bills through committees, voting on bills, eventually making some of those bills into laws. To keep track of bills, of course, bills have numbers. So from the point of view of a citizen, lobbyist, or an activist, it's all about bill numbers. Find out the bill number and track that number through the legislative process. Okay. Recently, I was putting together a call for action for a really important issue that we'll be talking about later, in fact. And I was using a database that a group I'm with created for making and distributing calls to action. But my action had nothing to do with the bill. It was never going to be a bill. It wasn't even about state government. The database form asked me for a bill number, a companion bill number, any bill numbers assigned previously, and of course, both for the House and Senate bill numbers, plus bill-related numbers. And I was inundated with blank spaces that demanded the darn bill numbers. And it kind of, which is okay, because that's what the form is for. Then it hit me. This is not about bill numbers. Sure, the bill numbers are important. Keep track of them. But they're just numbers attached to things that relate to issues and things that are important. Okay. What we want you to do is go find your senator or representative or the head of a committee of interest. And if you give them, if you just contact your legislator and you say, Representative Acomb, I wish you to vote for Bill XYZ, that's good. That helps. That's important. You should do that. But she's going to know that Vita and I sent you, or some other group. She's going to know you're part of a group of people that are organized to support a bill. And that's important. I don't want to say that's not, but that's all that happens. Okay. What I really want you to do is to take on the task of meeting your representative, meet Representative Kraft, meet Representative Acomb, whoever your representative is, and change the brain cells in their heads. I want you to be like a novel that's good. I want you to change their emotional state. That's what good writing does. Change their emotional state. Okay. Manipulate their emotions, manipulate their minds, manipulate their thought processes. Okay. Take to them your personal message. Look them straight in the eye or straight in the email. That's how you're doing it. And convey your feelings. Tell your story. Okay. My furnace needs an upgrade. It's a gas furnace. I cannot afford changing it from a gas furnace to something else. My water heater is broke and it's a gas water heater and I can't afford to do anything to put in the gas water heater in because it requires changing the electrical wiring in my house. Whenever I drive, I feel badly that I'm driving this gasoline jugging car and I can't afford, or I don't have the options because I live in Minnesota where they only have a few electric cars available because of what? The legislature did what? My 6-year-old came home scared because he heard about people dying in Pakistan from heat. My distant cousin's town were wiped out by a tornado. They're staying with me and they won't leave. You know, what's your story? My daughter told me the other day she won't have kids because this is a world we've created for her to bring her children up in, and she won't do that. Okay, bring that story to your legislator. Sit down and tell it to them. Don't bring them a bill number. Bring them that story, then ask them what the solution is. Ask them for the bill number that they have for you to address these problems. And of course, if they don't have the bill number, you'll have it. You can give it to them. Okay. And you're going to have a different approach for our colleagues and allies that are DFLers. I remember when my previous senator, Ann Johnson, I said to her in a meeting, I know you don't need to hear this, but, and she said, Greg, I do need to hear this. What you're about to say, I know what you're going to say, and I need to hear it. I need to be pushed and reminded. And when you talk to your representative or senator who's a Republican, they need to hear this too. I am convinced that there are a small number of Republican representatives and senators of yore that no longer are in the legislature because they didn't run again, because they were tired of hearing and knowing about these stories, but being unable to do a thing because of the party they're a member of. That's an election you won with your idea and with your story, not even voting. There are people that left the legislature because of that. Okay. And just as a reminder, you don't need to be a scientist or an expert on global warming or energy or anything else to do this. You just need to be a citizen with a heart and a vote. Okay. So please do that. That's what we're asking you to do. And with that, I'm going to ask Vita to introduce this evening's special guests.
Thank you, Greg. And boy, I'm inspired. I hope the rest of you are, to really, really tell my story and use emotion, because facts don't change minds, right? Hearts change minds. And so with that, would like to welcome our panelists. We have with us this evening Representative Patty Acomb of 45B and Larry Kraft of 46A. Patty is in her 3rd term in the legislature, and she serves a very important position as chair of the House Climate and Energy Finance and Policy Committee. And Larry Kraft is the vice chair. So they're both very important to this legislative process. Patty also serves on health, finance, and policy, sustainable infrastructure policy, and ways and means. So ways and means, I understand, is a very important committee if you want to get a bill passed through. And Patty also lives in Minnetonka, and she has a degree in natural resources. She's married to Craig, and they have 2 children. And Larry this is his first time, Representative Kraft, to be in the legislature, but he was on the St. Louis Park City Council. And before that, he started a nonprofit to help youth that were wanting to advocate for a tougher climate policy. He left, I think, a very good paying job in the tech industry to start up that nonprofit to help youth that wanted to help change climate's hearts and minds about climate. So we want to welcome both of our guests this evening. They both know a whole lot about this issue. Patty was the chair of the House Climate Caucus last session, and now she's slipping into this role as chair of the committee. And I would also like to give a little bit of a background. Some of our guests tonight may or may not be aware of this knowledge about climate before we hear from our representatives. So if you would, please follow along a little bit here, and then we'll get right into our discussion. But you should know that our climate here in Minnesota has already changed, and it's going to continue to change. This graphic I'm showing you from the DNR shows that our yearly average has changed about 3 degrees Fahrenheit. The national average is about 2, so we're warming more than some other states. And it's also very much affecting our average winter lows. You can see they're about 6 degrees on average, with a variation that's even worse in the North Woods, right? Where we need it to be cold in the winter to kill those pests. and here. And our average summer highs are, of course, creeping up too. And it's not just about the highs, but it's also about the extremes we're seeing. A lot of extreme weather. And with increasing emissions by mid-century, you can see the yellows and the oranges showing we're going to have 4 to 6 days where temperatures will exceed 100 degrees. And with high emission scenario, meaning we operate business as usual, it's going to get quite bad in Minnesota. And we know that this, of course, affects people that don't have air conditioning, people that have to work outside, right? Our farmers who will affect their crops and many other things, more water use, right? And we also are seeing that our rain events, we can't rely on them, right? Here in Minnesota right now, we've had drought, and now that we're getting all this snow, the ground's frozen. But our precipitation events have been very uneven. We have had 6-inch rain, mega rains events, 16 of them since 1973, and with 11 of them happening since 2000. So this pattern of heavy rains falling as opposed to even rains, less rain at once, where we get major infrastructure damage and flooding is going to continue. And again, if we continue to release CO2 and methane and other things as we have been, if we don't cut emissions, we're going to see this happen a lot more often. And of course, there are inequities to climate change. We are seeing unequal exposure to pollution. We have communities, mostly BIPOC communities, low income communities that are stuck near our freeways, that are breathing in the diesel fumes, that are having higher temperatures in the summer because of the heat islands, and don't have the air conditioning perhaps, or as energy efficient of homes, or are able to upgrade their appliances and other things to save money. So all of these things are part of the governor's climate action framework, that as we make changes in our state, we must help everyone. All communities must be lifted up, and we have a chance really to do a whole lot more than just reduce emissions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Greg to talk briefly about our energy mix.
Yeah, thanks. And I don't want to go into technical details here or any of that. I really want to tell two stories that these graphics show. The first story here is a shift just in 15 years of how much of our electricity comes from coal to a much, much smaller amount, and how much of our electricity comes from renewables, wind and solar, from a small amount to a bigger amount. And that's nice. That's the good news, but that's not the story. The story is that 21% of our electricity now comes from natural gas. It was 5% in 2005, went up to 21%. And one might ask, why did we split our coal between renewables and natural gas? And the reason we did that is because of policy, essentially. It was a policy decision. It wasn't a policy decision made by the legislature specifically, but it involved the power companies, the power industry, and the legislative process. And the idea here was that natural gas was an intermediate bridge fuel to renewables. Because of a lack of faith that renewables would come up and take over, natural gas is used for power plants instead of coal, but it's also being used instead of wind and solar. Okay, let's say back in that one for just one more second. The bad news here is it didn't have to be that way. Okay, a lack of faith in renewables combined with a lack of stalwart will resulted in us with 29% renewables and 21% natural gas instead of 40% renewables. It did not have to happen from a technological point of view. It did not have to happen from an economic point of view. That is a political outcome. Okay, next slide, please. This slide also shows a political outcome. We have what looks like a dramatic increase of wind energy and some solar increase in this state. This is a pitiful graph, not a happy graph. If you look at the amount of wind being generated, and Patty may speak to this later, in Germany today versus 5 years ago, that's a graph. Okay, that's like, oh crap. There's no more natural gas for us to keep our industries going. Let's build a few hundred windmills a month or something, whatever it is. We could be using wind resources in Minnesota and the Dakotas at a substantially higher rate than we're using now. That's an impressive looking graph, but it had to be 10 times bigger and it has to be that way in the future. And I'm just throwing the number 10 out there. That's a matter of, again, a political will and resistance to shifting over to these renewable energy sources that we've experienced. We need a better story in the future than we've had in the past. Okay, and then the last graph, you know, how many people in this country want abortion access, widespread abortion access? It's a strong majority. How many people in the United States legislature, in the United States Congress, will vote for that? It's about 50-50. How many people, and I can ask the question, how many people want fill in progressive value of your choice? The answer is going to be 60 to 80%. How many people in any legislative office, body of the states or the country will vote for it? The answer is something close to 50%. 83% of all Minnesotans want us to solve this problem that our guests are speaking about today. 83% from this poll organized by several, this is a good poll organized by several entities. How many people in our legislature are willing to vote yes on this? It's about 50%. Okay. This is the kind of broken government that makes people want term limits, and I'm not a term limit fan. This is the problem. And the people who are with us today are leading the way to fix this problem. So we expect you all to fix it by the end of this legislative term. Can you manage that, you guys? So
I'm going to stop share here a minute, and we're going to hear from our panelists.
Great. We have an idea. We have a vague idea of what's going on in the legislature regarding climate change and energy, but we'd like to hear like the current and the most relevant idea, and we'd like to hear new stuff no one's heard tonight. That'd be great. And just to find out what's going on. And I was wondering if you can start out by talking to us about the House Climate Caucus plan for the 100% bill, and if there's anything extending from last year regarding building efficiency. What have you got on the front burner right now for climate energy change, especially the 100% bill? And while you're talking about that, if you can let us know what kind of response and involvement are you getting from across the aisle right now in terms of either support and help or resistance? Because some of our people may be speaking to Republican legislators. So,
sorry, for everybody else, feel free to put questions in the chat. I am tracking them and keeping track of them. Okay, so yeah. Let us know about questions. We'll have some time.
Shall we start with Representative Acomb? Or you guys can choose how you want to go.
Sure, I'll go first. Hi, everybody. It's so good to be here. Thank you all. How many people? It's almost 70 people here. Thank you for taking time out of your Sunday evening to come and chat with us about climate change and hear from the wonderful Greg and Vida. Really happy to be here. I'm thrilled to be chairing the House Climate and Energy Finance and Policy Committee this year. A lot of really exciting stuff going on. In talking about the 100% bill, we passed it out of our committee last week. There was a good, healthy debate about the bill. I will say that Majority Leader Long continues to be the author of the bill. He introduced it. He's introduced it several times. I think that this time it certainly is going to pass with our DFL trifecta. But I will say he's worked really hard to bring both sides of the aisle on board. And I think there are a lot of issues regarding rural munis and co-ops, for example, that he has worked to try and minimize their opposition to. And so I really hats off to Representative Long for the work that he's put into getting the bill to this place. But it's going to come to the House floor this Thursday. And so that's really exciting. And I think that we've got the votes in the House. And so I think we can expect a celebration that night for sure. And so, Greg, you asked a whole bunch of questions and I forgot most of them. Well, so if I miss anything, I'll let Larry fill in.
Yeah, the other issue is just carryover from last time with all of the energy building efficiency bills and that kind of thing. Is there anything more going on there?
Yeah, there is, and Representative Robert Bierman last year had some efficiency bills, and he is introducing them again this year. I think when I think of this year, there's kind of two main goals that I'd like to work on, and that's removing barriers to implementing and deploying more renewables, so more wind, as Greg was talking about, and more solar. And then because buildings produce 40% of our greenhouse gas emissions, we need to be doing all that we can to reduce those emissions. And so we've got a great opportunity with the federal programs, the IIJA and the IRA. We've got a great opportunity to partner with the federal government and really make a difference in energy efficiency and appliances. And so there's some great opportunities ahead for sure.
I can add on the building side. Hello, everyone. I echo what Representative Acomb said. It's great to be here and see such a large group of some folks I don't know, but many that I do, many good friends. So thanks for having me. I'll add on the building side. There are absolutely the IRA is just a huge opportunity, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit more later on. But additionally, there's a couple bills that I'm carrying this session. One on commercial energy building codes, which might not be the most sexy sounding of bills, but it's actually what it will do is require our building code to update every 3 years and reduce by 8% reduction in emissions each year, an improvement in efficiency, so that by 2036, all new commercial buildings will be built to net zero emissions. And that's something we've been working on for several years, but I think we'll be able to hopefully have the votes to get that passed this year. And then we have to start thinking about existing buildings. And there's another bill I'll be introducing shortly. And both of these are ones that Representative Long had started in the past. So standing on some big shoulders, but there's a energy benchmarking bill, a building benchmarking bill that will require all buildings around the state over 50,000 square feet to get benchmarked. So you have a miles per gallon on what cars do, or and with buildings, we're going to have everyone to have a building score of how efficient they are, and then require the ones that do the poorest on that benchmarking to get some get an audit, and then we'll look beyond that in subsequent years to start then providing some tools and maybe some requirements for them to gradually reduce their emissions. So those are two things that buildings are huge, as Representative Acomb said. In my city of St. Louis Park, it's actually 60% of our emissions, and so dealing with anything new and then really focusing on the existing stuff is really important, especially as we as the grid becomes electric and we can just more and more electrify everything.
Great. Does Representative Jamie does leave a long shadow, that's for sure. He's done a lot of great work for us, but trying to figure out how to work that pun, but that wasn't maybe that good. Can you tell us about how is it going to work out? What is the federal infrastructure money going to cover, and how do you legislatively get that money into our hands? Is that people are asking? We had this on our list too. Is that going to include EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure too?
Greg, that's a great question. And I think that the federal money is going to be coming in forms of grants, and so there's going to be opportunities at all different levels to apply, whether it's an individual, and then there might be individual rebates, but there's a real opportunity for some investments in our state that involve all jurisdictions and all local or all units of government. And so we're in the process of putting together a bill that will develop what's going to be called the Competitiveness Fund. And so it's going to take some of our state surplus dollars, and this is a great, perfect reason to use one-time dollars, but put it in this competitiveness fund that will be there to be matching grants for cities. For example, Winona could say, we need some matching funds to get this infrastructure money to help us make our infrastructure project more resilient and sustainable. And it will, so the opportunities really go the range from individual consumers that can buy electric appliances and put solar on their roofs. It will allow schools and units of government to now get the rebates that come from solar. So there's just the geothermal will be, you'll be able to get rebates for geothermal as well. So there's a long list. It's hundreds and hundreds of different granting opportunities. The Department of Commerce is the one working most closely with energy and some of the climate things. And the Department of Transportation is also very involved in the whole federal IIJA. So there's, thank goodness, there's some expertise at the department who is working with the Federal Department of Energy on what these granting opportunities are going to be. One of the challenges will be that so many of our cities and counties around the state don't necessarily have the person power or the capacity to go out and find what all of these grants are. And so one of the things that we want to try to do is have build in some organizations to help with that capacity. My dog is talking in the background, so I apologize. So recognizing that, there's expertise in grant writing with some of our regional development authorities. And so we're looking to partner and find ways to help cities and counties all across the state be able to access and know what's available, because frankly, it's pretty confusing. The kind of landscape is changing quickly, and so it'll really be necessary to have some expertise to help guide us along the way.
Yeah, there's a number of city council members and so on this call, and I think they're probably very happy to hear that. On another level, I was not going to ask you about this. The average, a city doesn't necessarily know what to do. You're right. They really don't. They may not have the expertise and the capacity, especially smaller cities. There are also cities where the politics in that city resists these changes. And that is done through systematic built-in ignorance, purposeful ignorance. We don't really know how this is going to work. We don't really know the technology is ready. I hear that from city people all the time in this area, and as a problem. So it's got to be a little bit more than just expertise. It's got to be a nudge or a push somehow, and that's where we can help too, because we can go and get people elected to city councils that will do the right thing, for one thing. But what about the regular person? Like, if I want to buy a house, I have to do like 10 things that are legally difficult and economically difficult to do, but I don't need to do any of them because there's a real estate broker who knows everything. And that real estate broker works with a closing company that knows everything. So I have to shell out thousands of dollars for this, but all of the difficult legal and technical things are done for me. If I want to take my house, which has a gas furnace and a gas water heater and a gas stove and a lousy insulation and a roof that I don't know if I could put solar panels on it or not, what to do, and I don't have the electrical wiring in the right places, I don't know what to do, and I'm afraid, and I'll just replace all my gas appliances with gas appliances until you tell me I can't. Is there a way to have can we have an energy broker for our own personal use? Can there be a person, a state certification for an expert who can help private landowners or business owners or property owners to make these transitions in a way that allows you? We're all afraid of contractors. We're all frightened of contractors for something we've never done before. To help make that. Are you guys thinking about anything like that in your proposals?
Maybe I'll start on that. So one of the other pieces that I want to highlight about the IRA is that there's a ton in that, and there's a lot of grants and things, but there's also tax credits that started January 1st for things like solar, and I think there's EVs and heat pumps and things like that. And those tax credits will be in place for 10 years. They're not limited, so then they will not run out. We can use as many of them as we want to. and they're refundable, which means that you don't actually have to have a tax liability to leverage them. So whereas previously a city government, for example, or a school couldn't use the tax credit because they didn't have a tax liability, they now can, and that's 30% on solar, for example. So with this, I think this is something on the IRA that we need to put some effort into on an education perspective, a marketing perspective of that's available, and then also the kind of thing you were talking about, Greg, of how do you help people to, all right, now I got to connect with someone to do it and to demystify it and help there. I don't think we have the answer to that just yet, but I know there's a lot of discussions on this. Something that I'm really looking into is how do we leverage those and help people leverage those tax credits, and those things are available to anyone in any city in the state. So regardless of the politics in your city, there's still a lot of people that want to put up solar energy or make their house more efficient and save money that way. And these things can do that.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
maybe can I just add on to that for a second? There's a bill that I'm working on that's around providing an additional rebate for air source heat pumps. And there is, as Larry said, a rebate from the federal government for air source heat pumps, but they're still more expensive than what most of us have in our homes now, which is a natural gas furnace. And so I want to provide a second state rebate that will layer on top of the federal rebate to bring it more in line with what it would cost for a natural gas furnace to replace that. So then we can make the right choice, the economic, at least close to the cheapest thing. And in a part of that, Greg, you brought up two really important points. And one of that is we need workforce development. And so many contractors that I've had come to my house for different projects, whether it's been my furnace that is, I'm holding on for my air source heat pump, but it is limping along this winter. And I tell you what, the contractors are not, they're not out there promoting air source heat pumps. And so I think we need either workforce development to retrain or educate the contractors, or some sort of incentive. I don't know what that looks like yet. I'm in the process of trying to figure that out with some of the organizations that work in this space, Fresh Energy and CEE. So looking for what has worked before around kind of changing the minds of our workforce. And then you also touched on something that's another point that I want to try and include in this bill, and that's consumer education. And I don't know if that's having workshops through, cities. Many of you, I'm sure, have been involved and been to some of the EV showcases that have been around the state over the last couple of years, where they bring a bunch of electric vehicles to some location within a community and people can come and check them out. Well, I think we need to do something similar for some of these, appliances that maybe people don't understand. Maybe it's the heat pump water heaters and the air source heat pumps, to replace our gas furnaces. So I think there's, it's kind of a three-pronged thing to have an incentive, to have some workforce development and incentive, as well as consumer education.
Excellent. Yeah. Would you be able to give us a sense also of how this set of legislative initiatives fits into the Walsh budget? How does that work? Is that not something we want to talk about?
I don't think we've officially seen his budget yet.
Right.
He's been rolling it out bit by bit.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Patty, if you have more on that, but I know he's committed to climate action, and he's been supportive of the 100% bill and talking on other things, but I don't think we've seen the budget specifics as of yet. I think that's coming this week.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I haven't. The only thing I did see that he released last week was solar on schools for all the schools outside of the Excel territory,
right,
within the next few years. So that's, of course, I would love that, having been the author of that last year. But
right.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. As Larry said, the governor has been supportive of climate. He has his climate action framework, which has if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I encourage you to look it up online. There's a pretty extensive list of climate solutions and climate strategies. So I think there's a lot of support there. Who knows if we will be in total lockstep with them when it comes to our ambition.
Okay, yeah, that's sort of what I was just wondering how that was going to go, but this will be a process of negotiation down the road when they've come up with something. Yeah, can you just give us a quick overview of what the current status, or if anything new is happening with solar in the schools from the point of view of the legislature? Is that going to be expanded or changed a bit this year?
Well, it's certainly going to be built on. I think it's been an incredibly popular program. There's, as people may or may not know, there's kind of two programs or two tracks, one that goes through Xcel Energy, and then the other that's delivered through the Department of Commerce. And the Department of Commerce is responsible for the schools outside of the Xcel Energy service territory. And they put their grant program together. It was, I think, rolled out early last year, and within 30 days they had hundreds of applications, and I think by the late spring last year they had chosen 47 that had been awarded, and they're in the process now of working on those. Now, it maybe wouldn't surprise you. It doesn't surprise me terribly, but the Xcel Energy program has not turned out to be quite as efficient and effective in being rolled out. And so there's been some bumps along the way. So I would expect that there may be some changes. There's a group of advocates who is working to make a bigger and better Solar on Schools program for this year. So stay tuned on what that's all going to look like, but some great ideas involved in that. So looking forward to seeing how that's going to go. And I'm not going to carry that this year. Lucy Ream, who's down in the Shakopee area, is going to carry it, but it's going to be wonderful. So stay tuned.
Vita, we got a lot of questions in the chat. Do you have anything you'd like to bring
Oh,
up?
we sure do. Thank you. Many of them. Here's one that I think is important to address. Like to hear more about the challenges with the co-ops living up in SD3. Lots of co-ops are pushing legislators to vote no. So how can we message with more rural cooperatives, smaller cooperatives, to see that this is in their favor 100%? Bill?
Well, I think that's going to be really important. I think it's going to be okay in the House, but it's going to be really important in the Senate. And so they've got a narrow margin there. And so I think ultimately it's going to, in communities all across the state, it's going to be important to reach out to your senators and your House members to tell them that you support this bill. Because I don't know if any of you got it, but the Center for the American Experiment sent out a hefty 60-page pamphlet on why this is a bad idea. So I do think that legislators need to hear from all of you, so it's important. I think that some of the changes that need to happen, that in my perspective, in the co-ops and munis, currently they have a cap on solar arrays at 40 kilowatts. And so I think ultimately, if we raise that cap and they can put in larger solar arrays, that should be a good thing if they can use the renewable energy credits for their 100% standard. I don't know that they'll maybe see it quite that way, but maybe there's something there that can help entice them to support lifting that cap so that we can expand solar more in outside of the Xcel Energy territory. So I don't know if Larry has anything to follow up on that.
I mean, I've already met with several of them and they're right against this. But one of the things that you can say to them, folks can say to them, is, look, this is a direction, and most of them are committed to move in this direction. They're just concerned about getting there in the time frames that are necessary. But I think Representative Long did a lot of good things in this bill. One is there is an off-ramp in there because it's recognizing that we as legislators might not know the specific intricacies of each situation. So a co-op can go to the PUC and can make the case to them that, look, if in our situation, if we do this, it's going to impact reliability or it's going to dramatically change costs. The PUC has the ability to take that within some guidelines, to take that into account, to adjust for a co-op specific situation. And there's also the ability, you know, a lot of them purchase power from another organization. So there's the ability of them to, you know, to purchase RECs for just the portion that's not carbon free. So there's things in there to make it easier for them to do it, to work on it. But yeah, they need to hear from folks.
Thank you. I'm also seeing questions about both hydroelectric, concerns about expanding hydroelectric and the impact of that, and also what is considered biomass and renewable, if that would include things like garbage incineration. As you know, we have many people are concerned about that in their communities.
Well, and that was has been a big discussion leading up to this bill, and when the 100% bill was passed last year, it had a carve out and did not include the Hennepin County incinerator, and recognizing that it is I would say that, in my humble opinion, now this is Bill aside, that you can't compare burning garbage with solar and wind and call it renewable energy, which right now burning in garbage incineration is considered renewable energy. And so Hennepin County can sell the renewable energy credits that are generated from their burning of their trash. And so in the bill that is passed out of our committee and that will pass out of the Minnesota House later this week, the HERC will not be able to use renewable energy credits. It is taken out. Now that leaves some of the other, Hennepin County is feeling as though they're being singled out, and in some ways they are, but it's because of where their incineration is located. And, you know, all of them are bad. I think ultimately they are going to a anaerobic digester. They have made plans to do that by 2026. And so this really doesn't have a long-term impact on Hennepin County and their environmental services, but it's been certainly a topic of conversation this past week. And as far as the hydro, the bill says that no new large hydro can be built and used for renewable credits.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Kraft, there's something in here about, do you anticipate advancing the optional city stretch building code this year?
No, that won't advance. And the reason is that the commercial building energy codes that I talked about initially started out as a stretch code that would allow cities to optionally do an advanced code. But after a pretty significant engagement with labor, with the Department of Labor and Industry, with commerce, with architects, there was a whole group that got together. And what they came out with was, rather than having that, they would prefer to have a single statewide code that advanced rapidly to net zero. So many of the contractors, labor was concerned about having multiple standards to meet, and thought that it would be easier to train and do to one code at a time. There was some talk about trying to still have some cities be able to advance it, but there's less support for that. And I think the biggest bang for our buck is to get the whole state marching down that path to net zero. So that's what we're going forward with.
Thank you. And then Wes is asking about transportation, which lags behind the electricity sector in terms of progress, right? How do we address this? Also thinking about like natural sinks with agriculture, land reclamation, you know, some of those natural ways also that we can reduce, draw some emissions out of the atmosphere.
Well, I'll start, but I'll ask Representative Acomb to chime in. I'm on the transportation committee. I'm just kind of getting involved there and digging in. I will be probably picking up some EV related things. EVs are a key part of what we need to do in EV infrastructure, and there's stuff in the IRA for that. And I know there's a number of bills around there. And then also, in general, just thinking about how land use is done so that we can encourage over time, making it easier for people to not use cars. There's a proposal to get commuter rail set up between Duluth and Minneapolis, which sounds really interesting. A number of things on that front. On the ag side, there's been some pilot programs and things. I've been working, no bill as of yet, but digging in a lot with Representative Christy Purcell, who's first termer and the vice chair of the Ag Committee, about how we can understand this better and see if there's ways we can put some real incentives, significant incentives in place for farmers to do the right thing, because there's some practices they can change in terms of no-till, low-till agriculture, cover crops, and the way fertilizer or lack thereof is applied that can simultaneously make the soil dramatically healthier, can absorb more water, clean the water, and be a carbon sink. And so I'm really interested in investigating if there's ways we can monetize some of that and help farmers make that transition more rapidly than they would otherwise.
And, maybe what I'll just add on is that, passing the 100% clean electricity by 2040 is really just kind of so it's the bold work that we need to do and just a start of all that we need to do to address decarbonization. And so Larry talked about transportation and agriculture, and we certainly know what many of our strategies are. And so what we need to do is get the political will to be able to scale them up to have the results that we need. And I think that one of the hurdles that we're facing in this is that so many, change is hard. And so industries are doing what they can to stay alive. And so I think that there's a whole lot of greenwashing going on that is being put out there as this is a climate solution, and yet it's really not. It's a way for a fossil fuel industry to continue operating. And though they call it climate because they know their customers or their clientele value addressing climate change, as Greg had alluded to earlier. And so I think that makes it hard for kind of the lay person to know what is real and what is a legitimate climate solution versus what is just greenwashing. So they're getting trickier, but we can see through the fog.
Excellent. And there was a quick question about building codes here. Are building codes written with component efficiencies such as envelope, insulation, heating, and AC efficiencies? Are we looking at the building as an entire system, 100% glass on the north side, et cetera?
So whoever wrote that question seems to know building codes and things maybe better than I do, but my understanding is that we are looking at a building in its entirety with these building codes. But I can't say yes to every single one of those things where that question came from.
Thank you. And with that, I really appreciate all your questions and comments and everything that has been shared with us this evening. I would like to talk a little bit about our ask this evening, what we would like folks to do. And as Greg said, some of the things you guys talked about tonight, Representatives Acomb and Kraft, don't have bill numbers yet. So we'll have to make sure we add them to our ask sheet, however, because it sounds like they're coming up soon. So give me a second while I share my screen here. To get my cursor to the right spot. Here we go. So this is our call to action. When we do these legislative forums, it is because we are hoping that you will act, whether you are making phone calls or emails, or perhaps attending a lobby day. There just happens to be a very big one coming up this week, this Wednesday on the 25th. I hope you can make it. It's from 9 to 1. We are not a sponsor. It is sponsored by the 100% team and MN350 and MNIPL and a whole bunch of groups. I'll be there in the afternoon with students after I finish teaching and meet with some representatives and hopefully stop by that Senate meeting. The Senate has a meeting from 3 o'clock, I believe it starts in 1100 Senate building about transportation. So that should be a good hearing to visit. And then there's a form here we'll share with you towards the end where we're asking you actually to report back to us. Please let us know what action you took so we can kind of gauge what kind of impact we're having here. And we'd also love feedback about this forum. So our ask is that you contact your senator or your representative or key people on these committees that, you know, you can look up, right? Who's the chair of the committee, and tell them your story via email or in person or over the phone. As Greg said, make it personal. First, talk from the heart. Okay. And once you've talked from the heart, hopefully you'll have a common vision, something you can connect with this representative. And then if you have a bill number, by all means, share with them. We want you to support the 100% clean energy, House File 7, Senate File 4. Ruth Richardson and others also have a wonderful bill calling for diversity. I actually didn't speak about it yet too much. Patty or Larry, are you familiar with that bill?
Yeah, so Representative Richardson's bill will call for reporting from utilities on the work that they're doing to attract a diverse workforce, and as well as reporting what how much diversity they have within their ranks. So it's recognizing that we don't have diversity represented within our utilities at this point. So it's an encouragement to get them moving in that direction.
Excellent. And I did see the 100% bill also speaks to this in maybe not with reporting, but saying that we need to, as we're increasing our use of renewables, make sure that we're training and having good union paid jobs and helping, especially in communities where it's new, right? Like, is it Becker where they're putting in the solar and replacing the coal plant, right? Because it's cheaper, right? We need to help these communities. Also, we want to, besides these bills, make sure that we are using our budget surplus. It sounds like there will be a bill coming down the road. Patty, you mentioned, I believe, to help spend that surplus, help people find that money, both at the state level, at the local level, and personally, right? To, as you said, I think, Larry, we can already use it, right? To help us get solar on our house or other things that would be energy saving. And I did note that the governor in his announcement so far said 458 million for environmental proposals, climate proposals. So if we could support that, I think that would be helpful. And anything else we should add to this list now that you would like to see us ask them to advocate for? You mentioned the building code.
Yeah.
I threw out in the chat that
Yep.
I do have a bill, HF 597, for grants. It had been for cities last year, but we're going to expand it to any local unit of government as well as tribal governments that's doing a climate action plan or climate adaptation plan or implementing a previously approved plan. There'll be some funding for that if we can get that bill passed.
Excellent.
And the easiest way, Rebecca's asking, are we going to send out this? And the easiest way to get this information that we're showing you now is to be a member. So sign up and be a member. And we'll be distributing a summary of these actions to everyone that way very shortly, so that you can get, and again and again and again. You will get some email from us if you remember, until you take yourself off our mailing list.
Yep. So
That's
we'll share here in just a second, this link, our ask links to, Greg, go ahead and put it in the chat, our ask, but we'll update it because we learned some new things tonight from our representatives. And so this is just a summary of some key reasons. It is helpful when you walk into a lobby meeting or when you have an email to have some facts or things to support it. You certainly don't need to use all of these. This is just a list of some reasons why we want them to act, because Minnesotans, this is what the majority want. Of course, we know climate change is real. The data is unequivocal that we are causing it, right? And however, we have solutions. So we need to act now because the longer we wait, the more expensive it'll be. And please bring up the co-benefits. Representative Kraft, you did a great job of doing that in the committee meeting that I listened to, where the Republicans were saying, what's the percent that we're going to draw down our carbon with this specific action? And both you and Patty very clearly pointed out that there are many, many reasons to take these actions. Many cities are far ahead of us, right, as a state, and that the co-benefits, the cheaper electricity, the cleaner air and water, healthier communities, lifting up people in our communities, all of these are reasons to act. And then, of course, something that I've bumped into in my battle with Great River Energy about closing Coal Creek is that the standard needs to be updated. Our electric utilities are using the 2007 standard as a reason to say, hey, we're doing a lot. We're doing great. And no, you're not. We need to do more. It is possible to do more. And so we're going to give you a push. And you have to report back every 2 years to the legislature. Is that correct? I think that's what I remember is in the bill. So we have many reasons to act. Remember, again, when you talk to them, share your story, what your concerns are. If you're talking to a DFLer, hopefully they're on your side already in terms of how they feel about these bills. Ask them how you can help. Who should I be reaching out to? Which other legislatures should I be talking to, or other groups? And what other bills are coming up that you'd like us to add to talk for? And if it's a Republican, ask them if they support the bill. And if not, you know, what is their plan of action to address these very real problems that are happening? So look for alternative solutions. No answer is not enough. And if I could, I would like to take a minute just to bring up something that is climate, but is mostly water. I guess it's both. Right now out in Elko New Market, where I live and where some people on this call live, we are dealing with an issue where a bottling company wants to come in and put up a huge factory to mine our groundwater, 310 million gallons a year, and put it in non-reusable, of course, plastic bottles. It would generate about 2.4 billion of them. So environmentalists, that alone would make your hair curl, right? It also is in a place where it would threaten the headwaters of the Vermilion River, which is a trout stream. So there are many concerns about this project. Also, the people living near it are going to have noise and diesel pollution. There'll be 110 trucks each day, 7 days a week, coming and going from this factory. And the intersection at 2 and I-35 already gets an F rating, and statistically relevant accident numbers there too, that mean it's going to be a problem. So we're asking folks, right now, the DNR is considering whether to do an environmental assessment. We made a petition, sent it to the EQB sent it to the DNR, and the DNR will be ruling on whether or not they're going to do an environmental assessment worksheet by February 27th or before. But they'll take comments now. You can write to Joe Richter at the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, just joe.richter@state.mn.us. And that would be appreciated. And we need them not only to do the environmental assessment worksheet, but make sure it includes a test that looks at how this will affect all the different levels underground. The deep aquifer, the Prairie du Chien above it, the surficial aquifers, and then the surface waters. And unless they conduct a multi-aquifer test, they have no idea. A similar test in Lakeville showed that it caused drawdown of South Creek, which is one of these trout streams. So again, we have reasons to be concerned as environmentalists. My cursor's not there. And we do have a petition. If you just go to change.org, we have now over 700 signatures. This is old already. But also reading the petition has all the background that it's kind of synthesized into some bullet points for you. So if you'd like to learn more, sign the petition. We also have a website or a Facebook group, Say No to Niagara. And with that, I would ask you to please watch for updates on our next forums. And thank you for attending and supporting a clean energy for Minnesota. And Greg, are you going to put that feedback form in the chat forum?
Yeah, I put it in the chat a bunch of times, the feedback form. And I'll just mention this forum is the first, and we hope to have these about every 2 weeks on some issue or another through the legislative session. And watch our website. I put the site in the chat several times. DFL Environment. We will putting this recording information from this, as well as Niagara, I think, in the blog as we produce them. So you'll be able to get current information from that.
Thank you. And thank you so much to our representatives, Larry Kraft and Patty Acomb, for joining us this evening. We really, really appreciate your wealth of knowledge and your passion and your commitment to making good things happen here in Minnesota. And thank you to all our guests, everyone who joined us this evening. I